Hello, welcome to Talking the Secret Doctrine. My name is Dr. Don Franklin Shepard, and today we will be continuing our study of H.P. Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine, her first volume, pages 379 to 380, in the section entitled The Lotus as a Universal Symbol. Once again, we will be using H.P. Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine, published by Theosophical University Press, located out at Pasadena, California. So let me begin reading in the very first paragraph and see what H.P. Blavatsky says. There are no ancient symbols without a deep and philosophical meaning attached to them, their importance and significance increasing with their antiquity. Such is the lotus. It is the flower sacred to nature and her gods. It represents the abstract and concrete universes, standing as the emblem of the productive powers of both spiritual and physical nature. So she gives the key right there that she's dealing with the abstract, the first, second, and the third logos, as well as the concrete universe, the sevenfold mundane egg. So now we know we're dealing with the tenfold cosmos, spelled with a K. So let's go ahead and take a look at the second paragraph and see what she says. The spirit of fire, or heat, which stirs up, fructifies, and develops into concrete form everything from its ideal prototype, which is born of water or primordial earth, evolved Brahma with the Hindus. If we remember not too long ago, we had this latent, unknown potential point, which only needed fire to transform it figuratively into an active central point, which ultimately then tinctured the seventh layer of the mundane egg to establish the concretized living being over the sevenfold universe, then we can understand this passage. The spirit of fire, or heat, which stirs up, fructifies, and develops into concrete form everything from its ideal prototype. So we have the potential point, we have heat, the potential point becoming the active point flying into chaos, and from there establishing the sevenfold universe. She continues, the lotus flower, represented as growing out of Vishnu's navel, that god resting on the waters of space and his serpent of infinity, is the most graphic allegory ever made. The universe evolving from the central sun, the point, the ever-concealed germ. So here she just describes the process that I've been discussing on this channel. Here we have the ever-concealed germ, which is going to be that latent nothing, that potential point united with the immaculate white disk, that potentiality that doesn't change. We have the point here is the third logos, and we have the central sun, which is the seventh layer of the mundane egg. So now it becomes clear what exactly the lotus is. The lotus is the stream of life that we've been discussing on this channel for the last many months. I think we should turn to H.P. Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine commentary, also published by Theosophical University Press. And in the first section on page 31, where she is talking about the Secret Doctrine, on this theme, this is what H.P. Blavatsky writes. It is after differentiation has begun and is the third stage of evolution only. Bear in mind that in philosophy we use the word light in a dual sense, one to signify eternal absolute light and potentia, ever present in the bosom of the unknown darkness, coexistent and coeval with the latter in eternity, or in other words, identical with it, and the other is a manifestation of heterogeneity and a contrast to it. For one who reads the Vishnu Purana, for instance, understandingly, will find the difference between the two terms well expressed in Vishnu, one with Brahma, and yet distinct from him. There, Vishnu is the eternal X, and at the same time, every term of the equation. He is Brahma, neuter, essentially matter and spirit, which are Brahma's two primordial aspects, spirit being the absolute abstract light. So here we have a description of Vishnu and Brahma. Vishnu here being the second logos, Vishnu being that expanse of space, and Brahma being the central point of light that emerges from it. So, in a sense, the lotus is the third logos. The third logos that then shoots out all of its petals into the sevenfold universe. And yet at the same time, as Blavatsky constantly reiterates throughout the Secret Doctrine, the second and the third logos can be interchanged. They are the same. This is why here on page 31 of the Secret Doctrine commentary, she talks about how Vishnu and Brahma are identical and yet not identical. To some extent, this is also because Vishnu, from one perspective, can be seen as the second logos, but united with the first logos, and therefore technically the first light, and Brahma, being the central point of light, activated from the first light, as the third logos becomes the second light. So the first light and the second light, as the first and the third logos, are intertwined. It's a beautiful passage here on page 31 in the Secret Doctrine commentary when one knows how to read it. When we're looking down there at the bottom of page 379, we have to remember the lotus flower is growing out of Vishnu's navel, that God resting on the waters of space, and his serpent of infinity is the most graphic allegory ever made. So let's turn to the Secret Doctrine, page 114, and see what H.P. Blavatsky says about Vishnu, and in particular in this case, relating to the serpent. Over on 114 in the first volume, H.P. Blavatsky writes this: "For the circle is Sar and Saros, or cycle, and was a Babylonian god whose circular horizon was the visible symbol of the invisible, while the sun was the one circle from which proceeded the cosmic orbs, and of which he was considered the leader. Zero Ana is the chakra, or circle of Vishnu, the mysterious emblem which is, according to the definition of a mystic, a curve of such a nature that adds to any the least possible part thereof. If the curve be protracted, either way, it will proceed and finally re-enter upon itself and form one in the same curve, or that which we call the circle." And in this case, this is a reference here, Vishnu, of course, and sitting on the serpent of infinity. The serpent of infinity is a spiral, and ultimately when one looks down on that spiral, it appears as a circle. Since H.P. Blavatsky talks about the Vishnu Purana, let's go ahead and turn to it itself here using the Vishnu Purana under the classic reprint series. And if we turn to page 38, we need to read just a little bit extensively, but I think we'll see how we get the idea that Blavatsky lays out at the very bottom there about the central sun, the top of the mundane egg with the sevenfold universe, the point, the third logos, Brahma, and the ever-concealed germ, in this case, Vishnu. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Vishnu Purana, classic reprint series, page 38 to 40. "Then ether, air, light, water, and earth, severally united with the properties of sound and the rest." So she lays out a sevenfold mundane egg in the Secret Doctrine. Here in the Vishnu Purana, we actually have an enumeration that is sevenfold. "Existed as distinguishable according to their qualities as soothing, terrific, or stupefying. But possessing various energies and being unconnected, they could not, without combination, create living beings, not having blended with each other. Having combined, therefore, with one another, they assumed through their mutual association the character of one mass of entire unity, and from the direction of spirit, with the acquiescence of the indiscrete principle, intellect and the rest, to the gross elements inclusive, formed an egg." So here we have the enumeration of the seven. Here we have an egg, which gradually expanded like a bubble of water. So we have that flat egg, and now we have it becoming spheroidal, exactly as HPV says in the Secret Doctrine. The egg ultimately either being the sevenfold mundane egg or the central point tincturing it. "This vast egg, O sage, compounded of the elements and resting on the waters, was the excellent natural abode of Vishnu in the form of Brahma." So Vishnu being the second logos. Remember, we have the darkness of space and the movement in it. It's actually a circular movement going through the darkness of space, bursting out as the central point. So we have Vishnu in the form of Brahma, so they're interchanged. And there Vishnu, the Lord of the universe, whose essence is inscrutable, assumed a perceptible form. And even he himself abided in it in the character of Brahma, the second Logos, abiding in the character of the third Logos. Its womb, vast as the Mount Meru, was composed of the mountains and the mighty oceans were the waters that filled its cavity. In that egg, O Brahman, were the continents and seas and mountains, the planets and divisions of the universe, the gods, the demons, and mankind. And this egg was externally invested by 7 natural envelopes. And we go on to the page 41 there. Affecting then the quality of activity, Hari, the Lord of all himself, becoming Brahma, engaged in the creation of the universe. And it goes on at the bottom of 41. Having thus devoured all things and converted the world into one vast ocean, the Supreme reposes upon his mighty serpent couch amidst the deep. He awakens after a season, and again, as Brahma, becomes the author of creation. So here we have Vishnu as the second Logos, in some way the first Logos. Vishnu is said to awaken. What that means is that he awakens in the form of Brahma as the third Logos, which then tinctures the sevenfold mundane egg, which awakens the concretized, manifested word. It's a beautiful section in the Vishnu Purana. So I think now at the bottom of page 379, we can understand this concept better that Blavatsky lays out of the central sun, the point, the ever-concealed germ. The central sun, the divinity over the sevenfold mundane egg, whether we call that Avalokiteshvara, whether we call that Dionysius, whether we call that Christos, whether we call that Osiris, whether we call that anything. It's the divinity over the sevenfold mundane egg. The point is the third Logos, Brahma. The ever-concealed germ is the second Logos, Vishnu, and to some extent, the first Logos as well, the Immaculate White Disk. She continues, turning over to page 380. She goes on to say in that second paragraph that the underlying ideal in this symbol is very beautiful, and it shows furthermore its identical parentage in all the religious systems. Well, of course it does, because every religious system had this notion of returning to our divine source. She continues in that second paragraph. For as soon as darkness, or rather that which is darkness for ignorance, has disappeared in its own realm of eternal light, there we have the second Logos, Vishnu, first realm, Immaculate White Disk. So that's why Vishnu can be seen as both either the first or the second Logos, and maybe in fact why the Vaishnavites held Vishnu as such a divine figure, leaving behind itself only its divine manifested ideation, the creative logoi, have their eyes open. So the divine manifested ideation in this case is going to be that the third Logos, the central point, tincturing the sevenfold mundane egg. She goes on, at this stage of action, the demiurge is not yet the architect. That is, all the hosts of beings in the sevenfold mundane egg haven't come into activity yet, and that they will. But the architect first has to understand the plan of what divine thought wants it to carry out in the lower realms. Finally, at the very bottom of page 380, H.P. Blavatsky turns to the Egyptian tradition of the Book of the Dead, and this is what she writes. In the ritual called transformation into the lotus, a head emerging from the flower, the god exclaims, I am the pure lotus emerging from the luminous one. That is, the pure lotus, the third Logos, coming from the luminous one, the first Logos, the Immaculate White Disk. I carry the messages of Horus. Horus is that central point breaking away and returning to the plane of the Immaculate White Disk. Horus is a very high divinity in this case. I am the pure lotus, which comes from the solar fields. Horus, breaking away from the plane of the Immaculate White Disk as the central point, descends down into the central suns, and then finally down into the solar suns, and therefore the pure lotus, the third Logos, the central point, comes from the solar fields, because Horus has descended into the solar fields in the fourth layer of the mundane egg. The theme of the lotus is a really, really beautiful idea when one comes to understand what exactly is going on with the theme of the lotus in its relationship to the tenfold cosmos. Thank you so much. Have a good day.